But having those numbers figured out before you hire someone
Yes.
is the best case scenario, because
Right.
it always costs you more than you plan.
Yes.
This is the Contractor Files podcast. Your hosts, Ethan McNeil and Trent Keith, take a deep dive into the construction and remodeling industry to uncover keys to success and pitfalls to avoid.
Hello everyone, we're back again.
Yes, welcome to this podcast. I'm Ethan McNeil.
And I'm Trent Keith.
Yeah, and today we are going to talk about how do you decide what hourly rate to charge. And I know most of you are probably wanting to charge as much as possible. But there's actually a lot that goes into figuring out what hourly rate you can charge. Obviously, the market can dictate that. But even more than the market, you need to know what numbers in your own internal business come together to form that hourly rate. You don't need to just guess. So, yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you have those, what you want to call it, the formula that you have to put together to come up with what your rate should be.
Yes.
But also in the back of your mind, you have to know when you're first getting started in the winter and during slow times, whatever that number is, you may have to throw out the window and just get what you can to get by. Because there are always times, everything okay?
Yeah, sorry.
There are always times that work is slower when you first start, and you may have to adjust. Maybe you need, I'm just throwing out a number, maybe you need $30 an hour. And during the slow times, you have to do jobs for 15 or 20 because you just have to have work. And that's a form of advertisement too. So you definitely need to know what your rate should be, and do not get hung up on that during the slow times.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think too, with talking about hourly rates, one of the things that we notice this isn't just in contracting, this is all across the board. Anybody wanting to start their own business or do their own thing. What you charge per hour is not your take-home pay. Yes, that take-home pay is included in the hourly rate, but it is not what you or your crew members are actually going to take home. So if you charge $30 an hour, you are not making $30 an hour as a crew member or as the owner of the business. So that's one of the biggest. That's kind of like the base figure you need to figure out. The base figure you need to figure is what is the take-home pay I or my crew members need to be able to take home. I just keep repeating myself here. So that's like that is just the base amount in your hourly rate. So say you have a crew member and you want to pay them $20 an hour. That is your starting amount, and then you're going to add. We have a list of things you're going to add on top of that $20 an hour to figure out exactly how much you need to charge. It might be $30, it might be $40 an hour that you actually need to charge for that one crew member to take home $20 an hour. So as a business owner, you've probably already figured out, I charged $30, $40, $50 an hour on that job. I did not bring that home. And that is because there is lots of things that go into that hourly rate, that they have, the expenses that hourly rate has to cover, that a lot of times you're not thinking about.
Yes, for sure. And if you're hiring employees that are not planning on sticking with you for long term, or not planning on keeping a job, period, that will affect how much you're spending also, because you still have to pay for those employees a lot of times once they quit because they're drawing unemployment.
Yes.
So it actually comes back on you to a certain degree.
Yes. Yeah, and that's one of the hidden expenses is taxes. You have Social Security, Medicare, payroll taxes. You also have unemployment taxes, and in a form of taxes, it's not really a tax, but you also have workers' comp that you're probably going to be required to have. And different states have different rates for unemployment and for I'm sure California has some extra fees out there that we don't have here in Indiana, but that's something an accountant could help you with. So you've got your base pay that you want to take, your take-home pay for that employee or you, and then you have taxes on top of that you need to figure out. And in Indiana, it's like, I want to say like 15%, and then unemployment is like another 2 or 3%, and then it keeps adding up. So these are all things you have to add on top of that base pay.
Yes, definitely. And it's one of those things that's tough when you first start.
Yes.
Because you think, you need to hire an employee and you want to pay them $20 an hour, and you feel like you can barely pay them $20 an hour, let alone all these other things that go into it.
Yes.
So having the numbers, which, like Ethan said, your accountant is the best way to do that. Mm-hmm. But having those numbers figured out before you hire someone is the best case scenario, because it always costs you more than you plan.
Yes.
For sure.
Yeah, and those are these expenses we've mentioned, their take-home pay and taxes and insurance. Those aren't things you can really get out of. Once you tell an employee, I'll pay you $20 an hour, you're locked in, you are paying those taxes, you are paying the insurance on that employee. So if you're only charging $22 an hour for that employee, you're going to be in the hole real quick.
Yes. That's for sure. And then if you want to be a company that they continue to work for, you're going to do extra things. Mm-hmm. Like when we had our business, we would do vacation time after they worked for us a year, And there's a lot of things. Of course, there's overtime pay. You have to pay extra if they work over 40 hours. And that's not even something that you decide. That is actually a requirement. If they work over 40 hours, you have to pay them overtime pay. So all those things you kind of need to figure out. And all of that is very detrimental when you're figuring your bottom line, because you may have thought, as Ethan said, you're bringing home $30 an hour. By the time you pay your extra employees and all the extra things you wasn't thinking about, you may be breaking even and not bringing home anything.
For sure. And those are hard things to figure, vacation time, overtime, but they are things that you can average out. If you're a company that has a lot of overtime, then just take the average of, I plan on paying an employee 5 hours in overtime, and then figure that into your hourly rate. 5 hours a week is going to be overtime. That's time and a half, or whatever. Maybe you're paying them more for their overtime, and then figure that into your hourly rate. They're going to work 40 hours, and then I need to add in the extra 5 hours of overtime that I'm going to be bringing in. So all these things, it's all about making sure you at least know they're there. Because a lot of contractors don't know, and they don't know why they don't have any money left over when they charged so many.
That's right.
So much of it.
Yes. And that's one thing that contractors really mess up on when they're learning is, even when they're bidding a job, they bid it with their hourly rate according to however they want to do that. And they most of the time forget that if you have to be done by a certain day, that you're going to have a little bit of overtime.
Right.
Maybe it's a job that you have to work nights because they don't want you there during the day. Well, then your rate has to be a little higher because you have to pay more for nighttime hours than you do daytime, obviously. So all of those things come into play. What type of job you're bidding, what kind of timeline you have, all that has to be figured in when you're working on your rates.
Yeah, and one thing that we found helpful is we would make a chart just for quick reference of if an employee gets paid this amount of money, this is actually how much they're costing us. So and I don't remember the numbers, but if you're paying somebody $20, they're actually costing you $28 an hour, which means if we want to make a profit, we got to charge at least $30 or more an hour for that person. So make a chart for yourself. This isn't something you have to figure out every single estimate or job you do. Just figure it out once. Figure out what your averages are. Figure out all these taxes and insurance costs, And then make yourself a chart if you need. This is, as employees grow in their pay rate, this is what they're actually costing me.
Yes, that's right. And that's the other thing you have to keep in mind. If you get a good employee, you have to give them raises to keep them,
yes.
right?
Yep.
So you have to figure that into your estimating also, because if you keep them at the same rate for 10 years, more than likely they're going to go somewhere else.
Yes.
All the different skill sets, you need to definitely do research and see what the going rate would be for those type of people, because you definitely want to pay your people well, but you also have to be able to charge accordingly.
Yes.
So depending on where you live, depends on what that would be exactly.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah. And one of the points that I made that did not get recorded because we had some technical difficulties is that you are competing against fast food chains and warehouse entry-level warehouse jobs now, at least around here, and I don't know how it is where you live, but where somebody with no experience or just out of high school can get a job for $18 an hour or more or whatever. And that makes it hard for you as a construction company because you're having to hire your helpers at a lot higher rate, which means when you go to a homeowner's house and you have to charge $25, $30 for that helper, they better be somewhat valuable to you because the homeowner might throw a fit if they're not. So it's a tough situation right now in the job market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's hard to find employees also. So when it's hard to find employees, the rate goes up.
Yep.
When they have good experience, the rate goes up.
Yes.
When they don't do good on the job, your jobs go down. So that's not a good call.
Yeah, that's right. No, I bet as a whole, I mean, I should probably just Google these statistics because they're probably out there. But as a whole, I bet the U.S. since COVID, I bet the labor rate has increased. Like, I'm trying to think what the hiring, like the entry level wages at like McDonald's and stuff was before COVID, and then after, like the labor rates have just gone so high. And if you're not adjusting as a contractor to those rates, you're not going to be able to hire anybody. Mm-hmm. And you just got to let the customers know, like, sorry, this is just how much stuff costs now.
Yeah, it's true all across the board. I've talked to different business owners, and they're saying the same thing for contractors, that everything from framing to trim work, all different aspects of building, the labor rates have double in some cases, and if not, have went up dramatically since the whole COVID thing.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all of these expenses that we're talking about, the other one I think that we missed was the training expenses. So that's another thing. If you do any type of training for your crews, which we highly recommend you do, certifications, any type of classes you pay for, that all needs to be figured into the hourly rate that your employees are costing you.
Yeah.
And once you have all of these numbers, this employee or this pay rate is costing me this amount of money. So say it's $25 an hour. Now you can figure out, what do I actually need my profit to be on this employee? And that one is a little bit more up to the market, and also what you need to cover your overhead bills and everything else, and make it worth your while. I mean, you don't want to make $2 an hour on an employee because there'll probably be more headache than $2 an hour is worth. So, what would you say about what do you come up with as far as how do you come up with a profit margin on top of the base cost?
The biggest thing is going to be your area, like you said. I would say your profit margin you want as high as possible, because no matter what your profit margin is figured to be, it's not going to end up being that much.
This is a gross profit for sure. It's gross how much.
Yeah, this is not once everything's done. And
No.
this is up front. So You want it as much as possible, but the catch is again, it depends on what area you live in and what type of clients you're dealing with. There are clients who will pay high end to make sure that you do high-end work.
Yes.
And if you are not a high-end contractor, then you're not going to be able to charge higher-end prices. So it's variable on all that. But along with what Ethan mentioned on the training, get your employees training. A lot of companies that sell products that really care about their end users will actually provide training for you. If you can schedule them, you can go on a weekend, you can go 2 or 3 days. They will train all your employees, they'll train you. Sometimes they'll provide food. We've even had ones back in the day that would provide the hotel rooms for us to come and stay and do all that. So do some digging into that and see what kind of training you can get, because that employee that you could charge $20 an hour for, once they've been trained in certain areas, that rate's going to go up dramatically that you can charge for them. So definitely work on the individual training on whatever you want to do. It doesn't matter what your product line is.
Right.
Most companies have some sort of training that you can use.
And when you are figuring out your hourly rate, keep in mind that it's much easier to reduce that rate for somebody than to charge more for that customer. So, you might say my hourly rate is $100 an hour for, a two-man crew, or maybe it's $120 an hour. But when you go to see a job and bid a job, okay, well, that actually includes about $40 an hour in profit, gross profit. So I do have some wiggle room. If I really want this job, I can bring it down if needed, if you're desperate or something. But it's easier to say your hourly rate is this, but hey, I'm going to give you a deal and I'll charge you $100 an hour, versus having to say, oh no, I did not figure this right. Of course, you might not get the job if you charge too much, but don't be afraid to, don't go too high, but don't be afraid to charge enough that you feel like, okay, I'm going to make good at this hourly rate, because you are in business to make money. You're not in business to be a charity case for people, or to, do everything for free, which is what will happen if you don't charge enough.
Yeah, that's the biggest key. And when you are able to, like Ethan's saying, when you're able to charge like you need to, you can pay attention to the detail that the people want, because you're not worried about going over the amount of time you figured and all that. You're taking your time doing the job right. And not only is the customer going to be pleased, but then they're going to refer you to others because of that. So never cut yourself short up front. Bid the job the way you need to. And then obviously, if you want to give them a deal because you really like this customer, or because it's the kind of job you feel most comfortable with, then you can adjust that. But always make sure you've covered yourself to where you can go above and beyond and do an excellent job.
Yes, because you will go out of business if you don't take into account all of these things. These aren't just like extras that you try and get your money back by adding in all these fees and figuring. No, this is your cost. So whether you like it or not, that $20 an hour employee costs you $28 an hour, and you've got to know that. It's not that you're trying to make a big profit margin by figuring all these. It's called you're trying to actually know what your expenses are, so you don't go out of business. So these are things that we just highly recommend you do. It's not about trying to rip the customer off. It's about making sure you're still there in 5 years to help them.
Yes, for sure. And you're going to have jobs that take longer than you thought. So it's going to be a little bit over what your estimate is.
Yep.
And that's part of it. So you're not going to make those wages you wanted. And then you're going to have jobs that go quicker than you thought, and they help balance out the jobs that didn't go so well. So you got to keep in the back of your mind that it's all a formula trying to figure out how you cover yourself with your estimates. And at the same time, it's a long-term thing. It's not going to be short. A lot of times, if you look at the week, it may look real bad by the numbers. It may take a month before you feel like you've actually made something. So all that plays into the whole overall picture.
Yep. And if you know what your costs are, you take the time, and like all these things are things you could figure out or have your accountant figure out for you. These are things that you can have one time, sit down and do, write it down, and then you know. And it makes you confident when the customer says, "What? You're charging me this much an hour?" You aren't thinking in the back of your head, "Oh yeah, I have no idea why I'm charging you this." You actually know. This is, I do have profit in there, but I have to have profit in there, and then I have all these costs and stuff. You don't have to tell the customer that. But you, as a person, know this, so you're confident when somebody pushes back on you at your hourly rate. You can know, I already did the math. I know I have to charge this per hour, and it's a good deal.
Yes. For sure. The accountant is a big benefit in all of that because they know what the going rate is around your area. And the other thing is talk to other contractors that do what you do.
Yes.
They are the same. They're in the same position. They're trying to make sure that they can make it and keep going. And if you guys communicate, you'll know real quick where they're at and what they're charging also.
Yes.
So always communicate with other contractors, your accountant, and different ones. So you do know you're in line with where you need to be, but at the same time where you're not cutting yourself short.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, and one last, I don't know how long we're going, so I can cut this out if I need to, but one last point that I want to make is contractors who do a good job are in high demand right now. There might be lots, and I don't know if it's changed actually in 50 years, but people who do a good job will get known that they do a good job, and they can charge a much better rate than those that don't. So do a good job. Focus on doing a quality job. Don't worry about trying to be the cheapest contractor out there. There will always be somebody cheaper than you. That's not what you're going for. If you want to be a long-lasting business, you need to be somebody that does a good job and then is able to charge a premium rate for that good job. And so that's the goal.
That's right. I even wrote down some notes for another podcast.
There we go.
That one. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. I'm Trent Keith.
Yep, I'm Ethan.
And you want to tell them about how you can check us out?
Yeah, you guys can go to our website, thecontractorfiles.com. Right there are some links to all of the podcast stations that we're on, as well as our YouTube channel. You can also find us on TikTok. We don't do any dances, but we are on TikTok. And you can also submit a question there on our website. You can ask us any question you want, and we might even answer it on this podcast if it's a good question.
I thought you were going to say we might even answer it.
Yeah. And the other thing, if your business is struggling and you're in the construction industry and you would like to have some consulting, we do offer a consulting package. On our website, you can read about that. And we have an app coming out next year for estimating, so stay tuned on that. I think that's all the plugs.
Thank you for tuning in to our podcast. Be sure to share this podcast with your friends and family. To ask us any questions that might get answered in our next podcasts, please visit our website, thecontractorfiles.com. Have a great rest of your day.